All right, Albert. Thanks for hopping on today, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How we doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. A lot to get into it with you. Let's start
Yep.
here. Fields at Ohio State. The work ethic for Justin Fields, which has been, you've seen Orlovsky at ESPN say what he had to say, and then he walks back those comments. Herb Street getting aggressive on social media as well. You know that Ohio State program really, really well. Had a very impressive pro day earlier in the week. What about the criticism of the work ethic of Justin Fields?
I think it's misplaced. And I think that I look like those questions were out there because I got those questions from teams 4 or 5 weeks ago. So I've done digging on it. And, basically what I've come back with, Moose, is that it's not a work ethic issue so much as it is where he sort of distributes his work. I'm sorry. I guess I'm like popcorn stuck in my throat right now.
That's all right.
Yeah, that was weird. It just came up on me. It's how he distributes his work, and so like a guy who, and you can see it looking at him, right? Like he's a beast in the weight room. You hear stories about how if you walk into that facility at 7 a.m, like off the books, he's throwing with his receivers, so the amount of hours he's spending working on his craft has never been a problem. But, I do think that there's probably a feeling, does he need to redistribute some of those hours and get in the classroom a little bit more? I think that's fair. I think it's just when you look at him, it's self-explanatory. Here's a guy who's always been able to win on the big things, right? Like he's always been able to win because he's bigger and stronger and faster than everybody. And so he was worked on the physical stuff. Like he's been really good at the physical stuff, and getting better at the physical stuff's always paid off for him. And that's not to say he doesn't do the little things, because he's always done what's asked of him. I think it's just, going to be a matter for him of getting better at the details, of getting better at the little stuff. Because, when he gets to the NFL, the gap between what you are and what your teammates are and what the opponent is on a week-to-week basis is going to shrink a whole bunch. And so I think that's sort of what it is more than anything else. And that's the way it is for a lot of guys who are freak athletes coming out of college and going into the pros, by the way, is a lot of guys have to learn how to win on the margins. And, that's where Justin Fields, I think, is going to have to make his improvements. I mean, the big stuff, you can see it. Like he's got all of that.
Yeah, Albert. All right, let's focus our attention here on the Jets.
Yeah.
They're not going to be in play for Fields, and I don't think anything that he did at his pro day is now going to change their opinion from what you hear around the National Football League. And I'm sure everybody and their mother believes that they're taking Zach Wilson second overall. Do you think that's just a foregone conclusion?
I think it's the most likely conclusion. Yeah. I mean, I know that they wanted to go through the process and, get a clean look at all of these guys. And there's stuff that we don't pay as much attention to publicly that really matters. And one of those things was seeing the guy throw live and being able to interact with them a little bit. And so that's why it was important for Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh to be on the ground in Provo and being able to have the chance to actually meet Zach Wilson and size him up too. And that was a big deal because there was sort of this perception out there. Is he smaller? He looks kind of small on TV. He looks kind of small on film. And I think most of the people who went to Provo, got that box checked. Like he's, he's not Trevor Lawrence, but he's not a small kid, and he's got room to put some weight on his frame. And then the second piece, which they don't have the answer yet, is like the medical. And that part of it, for the top 150 prospects takes place next week in Indianapolis on the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th. And the combine's putting on basically what amounts to a medical combine there. Teams are allowed to send their doctors and their trainers to come and check the kids out. And Zach Wilson actually had shoulder surgery coming out of his freshman year at BYU. And so that's sort of the second piece of it. Another box that Zach has to check with the Jets is his shoulder needs to check out. Any injury a quarterback has to his throwing shoulder obviously has to be taken seriously by these teams. And I actually think that's part of the reason why the Jets have held back on dealing Sam Darnold to this point.
Well, on that, Albert, do you think if it's, say he doesn't clear medically, do you think they turn their attention to another quarterback, or do you think they build around Sam Darnold?
It's a great question. I don't know the answer because I do know they like Sam Darnold. You know, I don't know if like Justin Fields or Trey Lance or Mac Jones, like if one of those guys rises to the level of we're ready to bail on Darnold. I also don't want to overstate the medical because it's not like there's this like huge concern about his right shoulder. More so, it's like he did have surgery, you know, and you guys can look on the internet. His arm was in a sling, right? Like, you know, coming out of his freshman year, and you just want to double check and make sure there's nothing there that would make you, you know, think any differently of the kid. It's the same as if a kid had an Achilles injury or an ACL injury. You know, Jalen Waddle, for example, like the medical is big for him because he just broke his ankle and he's coming back off of that. And so I don't want to make a bigger deal out of it than it is, but it is a box that that I think the Jets like really would like to see him check before they you know make the final decision to move on from Darnold. And you know, again, like I think. I like they like Darnold. I think that there's a feeling there that maybe everybody's best off if they move in a different direction right now. You know, but like, you know, if Wilson, if there was some sort of car wreck scenario where Wilson's shoulder doesn't check out next week, which again, I don't anticipate that's going to happen, would it cause them to think differently? I think that sort of depends on the grade that they would have on guys like Fields and Jones and Lance.
Albert, what would be the market here for Sam Darnold? You know, how many teams would be in? We've seen a lot of people say maybe a third round pick, maybe a fourth round pick. Where would the marketplace be for the Jets, and who would be calling when they finally make the decision to move on from Sam?
So, like, isn't it like on eBay? Like, there's like you can kind of bypass the auction with the buy now thing, right?
Exactly.
Like, there's a buy now price.
Right, that's it. So the buy now price $19.99 if you don't want to bid. Right?
So I do think that there was a scenario out there where if they I think there was a scenario out there where if somebody had put something in front of the Jets, like the buy now price was there. And I think the buy now price was probably a second and something else significant, whether that's a player or maybe a second draft pick on top of the two. If somebody had gone there with the Jets, I think he would have already been moved. So the fact that he's still on the roster tells you they haven't gotten their price. But I think, you know, another part of it is that they aren't like just actively shopping him around. And, you know, so that piece of it, you know, I think after we get to the medical and Zach Wilson checks out, maybe the Jets more aggressively try to find a suitor. And at that point, I mean, I think I personally think you should be able to get a 3 for him. You know, and maybe you make it a 2022 pick and you put a condition on it where if Sam starts for that team, it becomes a 2. I don't know. I mean, like, I think it's right in that range, right in the 2 to 3 range is where I think that the Jets could get where the price would be, you know, reasonable for Sam. And part of it too, I mean, remember this part, Moose, like he only has a year left on his contract and you've got to make a decision on his 5th-year option. And the 5th-year option under the new CBA is fully guaranteed. So if a team brings him in, you'd be looking not only at like, you know, you have him at a good price this year, but he's also got like sort of an open road to free agency if you don't pick up that option. So like it's a worthy swing on a guy, but it's not like you have control over him for the next 2 or 3 years.
We're chatting with Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter, lead content strategist, MMQB, Moose and Maggie, Mark Malusis flying solo. Albert, you know, to the Niners, because I think it's fascinating when you look at San Francisco. They move up to the 3rd pick, make that trade with Miami. They give up all the draft assets. They still have Jimmy Garoppolo. You know, you hear the rumblings in New England that is who the Belichick and the Patriots want to try and get their hands on is Jimmy G once again. 49ers make that move because they want Mac Jones out of Alabama?
I don't know for sure. I mean, I can tell you this, like this is going back to last summer, and I always do work ahead on the quarterbacks. I want to know who I should be watching in the fall, which college teams I should be paying attention to. And so I can tell you all the way back in the summer, people were telling me Trey Lance is a really good fit for a Shanahan style of offense. Like he's tailor-made for a Shanahan style of offense. And so like I understand why people look at Mac Jones and think that's Kyle's guy or that would be Mike Shanahan's guy. Kyle, I think to some degree, like wants a quarterback who's going to run his offense and run his offense efficiently and run his offense cleanly. And he feels like the scheme gives everyone a decided advantage. And part of the issue with Jimmy was Jimmy freelances too much, and Jimmy doesn't maybe see it fast enough. And, so like I can see where Mac Jones checks those boxes where you look at Mac Jones and you say, okay, he can do what Matt Schaub did. He can do what Matt Ryan did. He can do what Kirk Cousins did. And I think like the people at Alabama, I know what Steve Sarkisian has been telling teams would tell you, like the guy's really, really good in that area, like incredibly sharp. That said, did you need to trade up from 12 to 3 to get him? Like, yeah. I think he might have been there at 12. And look, like maybe the NFL, maybe there's a team out there that would have taken a swing at him. Carolina, Denver. But I mean, I don't know that you really had to go all the way up to 3 to get him. So that's what makes me a little skeptical about it. In the end, I can tell you 100% is the reason the Niners went up is because they wanted to be able to control the process. And they wanted to be able to say, okay, like now we can go forward and we can start, turning over rocks and we get some certainty. We don't have to hide from anybody in doing our work on all the quarterbacks and being thorough about it. Is Mac Jones a huge upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo? Is Mac Jones worth 3 first-round picks? I guess we're going to find out whether or not the Niners truly feel that way.
I know they're holding firm that, they want to hold on to Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah. They've said it publicly a number of times. Do you believe San Francisco? Do you think he is week 1? He's on that roster?
Moose, the best way to put it here, okay? The best way to kind of explain it is the Niners are trying to serve simultaneously their future and their present. Okay. And they're serving their future, obviously, by trading up, right? And going and getting the quarterback of the future. As for their present, like, look at the list of free agents they had this year. Trent Williams, Kyle Juszczyk, Jason Verrett. Like, I don't think they were all that confident they were going to be able to hold the whole thing together. And they have. And they were in the Super Bowl 14 months ago. And with the worst injury situation in the league, they were contending into December last year. They feel like they've got a Super Bowl team there. And, like, if you look at Kyle Shanahan's history, just look at what he did with Jimmy when they traded for him. He sat him for an entire month, right? Sat him for a whole month because he wanted him to learn his system. So now, do you think Kyle is... As much as he might like a rookie, and obviously they really, really like at least 3 of them, right? As much as he might like a rookie's talent, do you think he's racing to hand the reins over to that rookie of a championship team? Do you think like that it – so that's the whole thing. It's like, what's Jimmy's market value? Jimmy's market value is probably like around where Darnold's is or even maybe a little less than that, right? But his market value is irrelevant. What's relevant here is like, do the Niners want to put themselves at that sort of risk in handing over what they believe is a championship team to a rookie quarterback? And so if you're going to get Jimmy Garoppolo out of there, you got to make it worth their while. And who knows? Maybe we get to the summer and the rookie looks unbelievably ready and they want to move forward with him, and maybe the Niners deal him then. Maybe a veteran quarterback comes available and the Niners say, okay, like, well, if we go and get this guy, then we can bring this guy and save this money and then go trade Jimmy off to the, go trade Jimmy and get a 2 back for him, whatever it is. Like, right. Maybe something happens, but as it stands right now, I don't know, Moose. If you were the Niners, would it be worth like the 80th or 90th pick in the draft to put what you believe is a championship team in the hands of a rookie quarterback? No. Without ever having had him in the building?
No, the answer to that is no, especially in great example about sitting Garoppolo for a month. Well, then that brings you to the question about what are the Patriots? Week 1, Cam Newton, the starter for the New England Patriots, they're going to address the quarterback position in the draft here, Albert?
I think the draft is the most likely scenario. Now, I can't tell you whether it's going to be day 1, day 2, but I do think that they're going to spend a relatively high pick on a quarterback. And, where they're at 15, based on what we know right now, and I mean, I think the certainty now that quarterbacks are going to go 1, 2, 3, and the likelihood they're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, it puts the Patriots in a spot where if they're going to get one of the first 5 quarterbacks, they may have to trade up to do it, right? So, do they trade up or do they wait? And if they wait, is it Kellen Mond? Is it Jamie Newman? Is it Davis Mills? Is it Kyle Trask? So, I think you have to look at this at 2 different levels for the Patriots. And I mean, really, when I kind of look at where they're at globally, if you're trading like a 1 or something crazy for Jimmy Garoppolo, like that means you're hitching your future to him. Are you comfortable hitching your future to Jimmy Garoppolo? Or do you want him just to be your stopgap? Like your Alex Smith that allowed the Chiefs to get you to Patrick Mahomes, right? So, like, I just think from a value standpoint, when you look at it, it's easier for me to look at it and say, yeah, I mean, Cam's a stopgap, but he's affordable. He's allowed them to fill out the roster aggressively. And, going forward, they can keep taking swings at quarterbacks. It's not like they're married to the guy. And so I think, unless the price comes down on Jimmy, right now it's Cam, it's Jared Stidham, and it's probably a rookie.
We're chatting with Albert Breer. Albert, 2 more before we let you go. Got to ask you about everything with Deshaun Watson down in Houston and the Texans. All these civil lawsuits that are brought his way. What the NFL response is going to be. The teams that have backed off. I mean, I don't think you're a team you can trade for Deshaun Watson. What is going through the Texans' mind now with all this civil litigation brought against the guy that had? I mean, Albert, sure. The stunning thing is he had a sterling reputation. Like, you could not find one person that said anything bad about Deshaun Watson.
Moose, and that's why it's so hard to have a take on it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like if you have a take on it, you're either A, indicting Watson, or B, not taking the allegation seriously enough, right? Like one or the other. Like if you have a hard take on it. So I don't know how anybody can have like a real opinion on it without having insight into whatever actually happened there. Here's what I would say. I think the Texans are open to moving Deshaun Watson now. And I wouldn't have said that 2 weeks ago. I had Nick Caserio, their general manager, on my podcast this week, and I gave him 5 different opportunities to say, we're not trading him. He's our quarterback. And this time he didn't take them. And so, my sense is that they're very open now to the idea of moving him. And while I don't think it's necessarily likely that he gets moved until this is all cleared up, I think that they potentially could explore where you would have like some sort of deal that would be loaded with conditions where like, okay, like let's say it's 3 first-round picks, right? And the team trading for him has to sacrifice its round pick this year. But then let's say the next 2 first-round picks are contingent on him playing, right? Like something like that I could see happening. And I still can tell you that other teams are keeping their eyes on this situation. And one in particular, like that, I think, like if you want to relate this to the Niners move, like the Niners move up, keep an eye on what the Dolphins did. If you notice, like they were insistent on getting back up and they didn't want to go all the way down to 12. Look at what they did in moving back up to 6 and making that like a de facto 3-team trade. Now they're able to offer the Texans a piece of capital, a 6th pick, which is more than what Carolina at 8 or Denver at 9 can offer. So I still think that there are teams here jockeying for position and sort of playing the wait and see game. And it'll be interesting to see if the Houston Texans get to a point where, maybe things escalate over the next couple of weeks. I think they're way more open to moving him now than they were a month ago.
Are the Jets one of those teams, Albert, that are still in on Watson?
Potentially they could be. I mean, they're the 2nd pick in the draft. I know I can tell you it's not, it was something that was discussed there. Would they be open to it? I think the hard thing about this, Moose, like I think the football people, just from a football standpoint, would be open to it, or would seriously look at it and like hold it up against, do we take the 2nd overall pick and use it on a quarterback, or do we use that to go get Deshaun Watson as part of a trade? The thing that's hard about this, well, A, is of course, the potential suspension out there, right? And B, whether or not your owner will sign off on it. because this is one of those that's like, it's sort of a big box thing,
Yes.
you know, where you're talking about the owner putting his name on something, and whether the stuff that's out there on Deshaun, whether that's true or false, like if you're trading for him while this is all going on, the owner is going to have to wear that for a while, you know, and the owner is going to have to be the one that stuck his neck out and did this for a while. And that's the part that I think people might ignore that is really, I think, would complicate a deal happening while all of this is still going on.
Albert, last one would be the 17-game schedule being brought in. You know, are you a fan? I mean, everyone loves more football, but, you know, the fact that we're going to get 17 games beginning this upcoming regular season, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was coming. I mean, look, like this is, let's call it what it is. It's a money grab. And the reason the players agreed to it is because it means more money for them. And so, I think it's great. Like I'm looking forward to the fact that it's going to be weird. Definitely. Like, I don't know if I can wrap my head around the idea that we're going to have like a 6-11 team next year. We're going to have a 12-5 team next year. Cause I mean, I was born in 1980, so I've known nothing but 16 games my whole life. But like, look, like I think that this is part of who like Roger Goodell as a commissioner has been. And if you look at the history of the NFL, every commissioner was brought in for a specific reason. Pete Rozelle was a PR guy. He was brought in to be like the carnival barker, to promote the league, to make the league part of like the national consciousness. Paul Tagliabue is a lawyer. He was brought in to solve the NFL's labor issues in the 1980s, right? Because they had had the 2 strikes. Roger Goodell was brought in because he's a genius when it comes to generating revenue. And really, if you look at it, the NFL got to a point 10, 15 years ago where they made the decision, there's no more room for us to grow up, so we need to start growing out, and we need to start growing inventory. And so I think 17 games fits into the same box as going back to LA, as going to London, as expanded playoffs. All of these things have been done, making a bigger deal out of the combine, growing the draft. They've been trying to add inventory forever, and this was a very, very big part of it. God, the popcorn got me again there, Moose.
I feel bad. I want to give you a glass of water. I feel bad.
Hey, do not eat popcorn at 10 in the morning. That was a dumbass thing to do. No, but I think it's like it's another example. It's another example of adding inventory. And you know what? Too, Moose. Like, look, like one of the things was, if you remember, and this is when the NFL was like whatever, a $7 or an $8 billion business. There was that goal of eventually getting to $25 billion. I'm not going to say it was a mandate for Goodell, but it was something that was sort of out there. I think they're inching closer and closer and closer, and 17 games is a part of that.
Albert, you going smart pop? What are you going with at 10 o'clock in the morning?
I got the skinny pop, which is good. Like, it makes me feel like I'm eating healthy. Like, if I need a snack between breakfast and lunch, like, I feel like, all right, like, that's basically like me eating air. But, yeah, I guess it gets caught in my throat a little bit. So I apologize about that.
Good. We love you, Albert. Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter, lead content strategist, MMQB. Albert, fantastic as always. Appreciate the time here on this Friday. Have a good weekend, all right?
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Moose.